Thank you so much, James, for joining us today. We're very excited to have you here. As everyone knows, James is back and he's going to demonstrate forecasting in Fathom. This feature was one of the biggest updates and Fathom undertook since the initial development of Fathom almost a decade ago. It's taken over 40 people, 1.5 million lines of code, and nearly 2 years to research and develop, and it was released in late 2020. So people will be aware that Fathom is a comprehensive financial intelligence performance reporting dashboards and consolidation tool, which helps you to assess business performance, monitor trends, and identify improvement opportunities. And James has joined us, as I have mentioned, and you can access that YouTube video, but here he is here today to talk about forecasting in Fathom. So take it away, James.
Thanks so much, Heather, and thanks everyone for tuning in today. So I think I see a couple familiar names from last time, but a lot of new ones as well. So I'll start off with just kind of a bit of an overview of Fathom, kind of some of the basics, and then we'll get into our forecasting tool. Just a quick intro as well. So I work on our customer success team here at Fathom, originally from the US and moved over with Fathom and now work in our Brisbane office. So just jump into it. So yes, as Heather mentioned, Fathom is a business intelligence and reporting tool. So we provide the tools needed to analyze businesses, forecast and report on business performance, and get more insight into that business performance to make better decisions. We integrate directly with the main accounting systems, so Xero, QuickBooks, MYOB, as well as Excel. So if you are running a legacy system or not on one of these softwares, you can import from Excel as well. And who's it for? Fathom is quite general in terms of, we don't have a single vertical in terms of industry, so we can be used across any business that's looking to monitor and improve performance. It can be tailored to a wide range of companies, and a lot of the metrics are very transferable across different industries and business types. These are kind of the 5 main pillars or capabilities of Fathom. So the analysis piece is like a version of a dashboard. It's the online, engaging, kind of interactive piece of Fathom. There's the forecasting, which is what we're going to be focusing on today, that forward-looking piece. We have reporting, which is being able to generate board packs, management report packs in PDF and Excel format. And then the consolidations and comparison piece around multi-entity. So some of you may have clients who have multiple entities. You may be doing consolidations by hand right now. And so Fathom can help automate some of that manual work in your consolidated reporting as well. A quick blurb about the company. So yeah, we're based in Brisbane, headquartered here. We're an Australian company. We have teams in the US and the UK as well. And we're proud to say we're connected to over 40,000 individual businesses, whether that's a Xero file or a QuickBooks file. And we partner with leading accountants and advisors to help us deliver on our mission of helping businesses to thrive. A key piece of that is working with the accountants who actually service these businesses. And we find that has amazing results. So now we're going to jump straight into forecasting. So if you don't know much about Fathom, hopefully that gave you a little bit, but that other session that Heather hosted before will be more general on all of the functionality in Fathom. So that might be a good place to start as well. But now we're going to go right into our forecasting features, which we released right at the end of last year, start of this year. And talk about a bit of what these features solve for. This was an interesting stat we came up with during our research when we were starting to build the forecasting tools. But in this study, PwC carried out, they said that 54% of companies they surveyed said that a lack of automated tools was a key challenge for forecasting. So that is really the practical thing that we're solving, is we're providing a tool that makes it a lot easier to build a forecast for a small or medium-sized business. And then some details on how Fathom forecasting is different to other products you may have used in the market, and of course, different from Excel. Some of the pillars of our approach to forecasting here, just to kind of set the tone. When our product team did a ton of user research. So we interviewed quite a few different companies, interviewed 80 individual companies in the building of this. And we identified some common challenges across everyone who's building forecasts. And these were CFOs, accountants, bookkeepers, and business owners surveyed. The first one is that it's time intensive to create. So we really strive to make our forecasting product efficient to build and also to maintain on an ongoing basis. The other thing that was interesting was that forecasting typically is something that's done at the beginning of the year or end of the financial year for the next year, and then is sort of set as a 12-month forecast, and it doesn't really get updated throughout the whole year. So it starts accurate, and then it quickly loses relevancy throughout the year. So we really wanted to solve for that and have it be something that isn't a once a year thing. It's a continuous planning tool that's actually relevant for the business. Hard to decipher. So, we found a lot of users who are actually on the receiving end of these forecasts just found them difficult to understand. So that's a key piece. And I think a theme across Fathom that we've tried to keep is making things understandable, as well as auditable. So being able to actually follow something back in the forecast and understand where the number came out as being very, very critical. And then the last piece is difficult to communicate traditional forecasts. So we tried to make the interface and the experience of this forecast as approachable as possible, and also as actionable for the business. They can actually make decisions using it. So there's some business planning tools in there that are incorporated. A couple other kind of foundations of the Fathom forecast. So we're using the indirect method for cash flow forecasting. And for those of you who may not be familiar or need a refresher, indirect method uses the financial statements, uses the profit and loss and balance sheet to backwards calculate cash flow instead of using individual transactions. And so our forecast is based on the financial statements and not on individual transactions. So this is kind of the standard for medium to long-term forecasting. There are tools out there that are amazing for short-term forecasting. If your business really needs to know what their cash balance is going to be in 2 weeks, Float is a fantastic tool. There's a few others out there that really do that well. I'll talk a little bit more about the time horizon of this forecast, but it's more of this sort of medium to long-term. The other fundamental piece of our forecast is that it's a three-way forecast. And really what that means is that it links together the profit and loss, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement, and keeps them in sync. So when one thing changes on the profit and loss, it's immediately hitting the balance sheet, and as a result, hitting the cash flow statement. So keeping those three statements in sync is really critical. And I think this is a really important thing to mention. It sounds kind of simple, but this is really hard to do in Excel. If you're building a cash flow forecast yourself, actually having everything updating in sync is really important. And it also gives the forecast that accounting integrity, what we would call, where it's in theory being forecasted based on closed books rather than sort of theoretical data or transactions that are prone to change very quickly.
James, do you want to just check your microphone and pull it? It seems to be making a little bit of noise. Maybe it's rubbing against you.
Is it just moving around there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just hold it out here. No worries. Thanks, Heather. So those are kind of the fundamental pieces of our forecast, how it works. Basically, what we believe we've delivered is a forecast that makes it easy to create a forecast for your clients and automatically updates from your source accounting system. So you're not manually reforecasting all the time. You can basically set up a model that automatically updates from Xero or your other accounting system. And then we've built in some business planning tools. So you see this kind of animated image, that's a feature in the tool, which I'll show, called the roadmap. And that allows you to actually do some business planning in real time with the client. You can actually sit down and move events around and see the impact of those changes in the plan. Got some other research points here that we went through, and kind of some feedback we've had when we as we've rolled forecasting out. Some common themes that advisors really want to round out advisory services or services that they're providing to clients. And helping them see the difference between profitability and cash flow movements was really critical. So I'll show some of the features that tie into that, but don't want to spend too much time on this. The key thing here I wanted to talk about was the forecast horizons. And this is, if you're wondering kind of how this is different than other tools on the market, this kind of ties into how it's differentiated. So when we originally started looking at building this, we looked at other tools on the market and did some comparisons, and found initially we thought that a long tail forecast, like a 5 to 10 year forecast, would actually be what people wanted. But when we started doing user research and talking to people, we found that most advisors are building a 12-month forecast. They're building a forecast for this year, really. And I'd be interested to hear from the crowd here if that's correct, but that's what we found in our interviews. And so, and even though, when we asked them if the barrier to a longer forecast was the effort involved, they said, yeah, it is more effort, but also we don't really even see the value in going beyond 2 or 3 years. It's completely irrelevant for a small business. That may be different for a business that's highly capital intensive. Maybe they're building a factory that is a multi-year plan. Potentially you need that longer term, but the Fathom forecast is going to be up to 3 years essentially, and that's what we found to be most useful for most of the clients on Fathom. So this was kind of what we thought people wanted, out to a 10-year horizon. But when we did the research, we really found it was really in that 6 month to 1 year, and out to 3 years, at the extreme end. And this is kind of where Fathom sits compared to other kind of maybe legacy forecasting tools in the market. And this is not including, float and tools like that are more short term. Just some feedback here as well on the forecasting features from some users in the space. Really positive feedback so far. There's always more to improve, but we've had some really, really good responses from the market and from our customers. So excited to have more people try it and see what you think. I'll just jump directly in now and jump into a demo and show you around a little bit and actually walk through the experience of how to create a forecast and some of the features there. So when you land into starting to create a forecast, this is the first thing you're going to see. It's basically a wizard that's going to help you get started with creating a forecast. So I'm in a single client, single company here, Fathom Coffee Roasters, and we'll go, let's get started. And that initially brings me to the Get Started wizard. So there's 3 main options that you can use to start your forecast in Fathom. And these are just starting points. So beyond this, it's very customizable. You can change the calculation of every single line in the forecast, but these are just starting points. And so the first one I'll mention is the link existing budget. So if you already have a budget in Xero or in Excel, you can actually use that as your starting point. So maybe you've already started working on the next year budget. You can import that to Fathom and use that as your starting point and then build on top of that. So that's a great way if you've already got something up and running. The fastest way to get going is this quick start forecast option. And this is great if you just need to get something out the door for a client. They just want a rough idea of what's going to happen. Really what this is a smart prediction. So it's a statistical analysis. It's essentially a linear regression over taking data from the past 2 years and basically plotting out kind of a line of best fit of where we think the business is headed And so that's the fastest way to get started. And then you can kind of fine tune it from there. And then the last option here is the custom forecast. We anticipate probably most accountants using this option, but I'll just walk you through some of the actual wizard here, and show you some of the options that are involved. So basically what you get here is the initial logic or methodology you get to choose. So we've got the revenue accounts, cost of sale, and expense accounts, and you tell Fathom how you want those calculated into the future. So you can use that smart prediction on all of them, or you can go in and you can change that to link to a previous period, whether that's a rolling from last month, or potentially you want to do a constant and growing value, or you can link to the budget. So you've got different options. These are the main options for calculating anything in the forecast. You've got that smart prediction, link to a previous period, constant and growing. And then you can also do formula or driver-based forecasting. So if you want to use any external data points, for example, for this coffee roaster, they may have a cafe as well, and they may want to forecast their sales based on cups sold and cup size. And so they could, have their large cups, medium cups, small cups, and number of cups sold kind of estimated for next month's, and the price of each of those cups. So you can actually get to that level if you want to do that driver-based side. And then you can link anything to the budget as well. So once you've set those default, what we call value rules, basically the rules that Fathom's using to calculate things, you can get into some default accounts. So these are telling Fathom where to pull values from in the forecast. And so we've got a cash on hand account here in this company, an accounts receivable account. It's kind of a perfect chart of accounts here. Accounts payable, retained earnings, and current earnings. That should be pretty uniform across most companies coming from Xero or another system. We've also got tax settings. If you'd like to set this up, you can set up rules for consumption, withholding, and tax expense, income tax. So all three, you can basically tell Fathom how much to forecast on each one. And then the last one is loans and depreciation. So if you do have any loans set up in Xero or another system, Fathom's going to pull those in, and you'll be able to define an interest rate for those loans. So Fathom knows the interest rate expense, and you'll also be able to set depreciation on any assets, any asset accounts. So we've got a store fit out, asset account, furniture. You can set depreciation, and you can define the method that you're going to use. So probably most common is the straight line, but there's a few options here you can use. So you'll set a date here of purchase, purchase price, useful life, and residual value. And that is it in terms of setting up the forecast. Once you've done that, boom, we say create forecast, and we're going to use those rules to build your forecast. So now if we look at it, we've got our profit and loss, our balance sheet, and our cash flow statement here, all forecasted out. We've got, in this forecast, I'll just roll it back to May to show the month we're in here, but this is a forecast rolling from May. So we've got actuals through May, and then we've got forecasted results going out here into the future. So we've got our entire chart of accounts. Some of these groupings are collapsed, and we can expand those and see the individual account values. We've got the smart prediction running on cost of sales and revenue here. But if you wanted to change that, it's as easy as going in and creating a new rule and adjusting that to a different method. So maybe we would rather do a link to previous period, and we can just bring over last year's results into the forecast, or do like a rolling forecast from the last month. And then you can add increases on top of that. So maybe we want last month with a 5% increase rolling forward on our sales. So if we create that rule, And we'll go from May. Just create that there. So now we see that rolling forward, and we've just adjusted all of the sales forecast going forward. So that's how this works. So basically every month it's going to update from 0. It's going to bring in your actuals, and then it's going to forecast the next month, every month into the future for 3 years based on the rules that you've defined. So you tell Fathom how to do that, and it will continue to update every month for you. So no manual data entry. You can override things manually if you'd like. So if something's just needs to be overridden, you can just go in there and direct enter a value into any of these entities as well. So it does give you ultimate control over the forecast. Same thing with the balance sheet. So balance sheet, you can also add journals and schedules. If you need to do any of those types of adjustments, you can add those in to the forecasted balance sheet. We've got the cash flow statement as well, showing the forecasted cash flow out into the future. But probably the most impactful way to see the results in Fathom is down here in the quick metrics. So if we open that up, we can see our cash on hand, change in cash, operating profit, and a few other metrics you can select from that show the actual kind of bottom line business impact of your forecast going out into the future. So that's probably the most impactful thing in terms of putting something in front of a client and showing them what their cash on hand is going to be based on the changes you're forecasting. Just go through a few of the other features here. So there's a couple concepts that are really helpful for kind of business planning. So that's what we've just done is basically creating your baseline is what we call. So that's your baseline forecast, and you can build on top of that. And to do that, you can create micro forecasts. And the best way I can describe a micro forecast is it's a kind of self-contained event or initiative. So I'll give you some examples here when we go into create one. So maybe we can say hire a salesperson, and that would be a hiring event for the business. And we plan to do that in June. So when we go in and create that, we get our wizard again, and you can actually select from these 3 main micro forecasts or typical events. So this one's going to be an employee, but you could also add a loan or do an asset purchase as well. Or you can use add account, and that will give you ultimate flexibility over what this micro forecast is. So it could be, a new contract, a government contract. It could be anything that the business is planning for the future. So let's do an employee. So we're going to say they're going to be permanent, and we're going to pay them $80,000 per year in salary. And we're going to pull up our salaries and wages expense account to know where we're paying out. And we'll go ahead and add that to our forecast. So as soon as we've done that, we're taken into this micro forecast. You can see this is like a micro view of the forecast as a whole. This is essentially a forecast for this single event. So we're saying we're going to hire this person in June. From June, we're going to be paying them a monthly wage. We've already forecasted their income tax expense and forecasted the cash on hand liability and the cash on hand impact of this hire over time. You can go in a bit deeper. So maybe we think, okay, well, it's a salesperson. Hopefully they're actually generating revenue. So we can add an account here and actually add the incomings that we expect. So maybe we expect them to deliver $5,000 in sales per month on average, and we'll just leave that as a fixed amount. So once we add that in, now we have incomings from this person, from this sales hire. We've got the outgoings, and we still see that final impact of the hire. Now, when we go back into the forecast, we can see when we turn this forecast on, so we see it's activated here, we can see it sitting here in our forecast. So we've got our baseline sales, we've got our sales from the salesperson, and we've got, we'll have our expenses and costs of sale, or expenses from the salesperson here forecasted below as well. If we turn this forecast, this micro forecast off, it will adjust the numbers immediately for us. Another really cool way to visualize this is in the business roadmap. So this is a great tool for using with the client in real time. Once you build your plan with them, you can start to play with this and say, okay, you wanted to hire them in June. What if we push that back 3 months? What does that look like? And so you can actually move that event and it'll immediately hit your cash on hand and bottom line to show them how that's going to impact their business. So you can build a plan here with the roadmap, putting different events and initiatives together and modeling different scenarios.
It could be things like promotions. You could have a pay for a promotion in a magazine, or end of aisle promotions like we used to do in retail, and the impacts of that. Looks very
100%. Cool. Yeah. Any sort of marketing initiative as well would fit well into the micro forecast concept.
The marketing people, they would be preparing their own budget, but then laying it over this would be really useful. They must really love it. Yeah,
it's a way to bring the whole business together into a plan. And then you can also build on top of that with the scenarios piece. And so the scenarios kind of bring it up a level, and you're able to attach different things together into a scenario and create, best case, worst case scenarios that include those events, as well as some top line changes to the business. So I'll just give you an example here. Maybe we say our best case, we'll model that out, and we'll use the main forecast. And maybe we think our best case is that we increase revenue by 5%. And maybe we say something else like our cost of sales only increases by that amount. We'll include that salesperson hire. So best case, we were able to hire this person, and we'll add that as a scenario. So now we have a scenario that we can turn on and off and compare with other scenarios in this menu as well. So we can turn that off and go back to our base case. If we go back to our forecast as a whole here, so we're looking at our base case here, what's going to happen. And now we can turn on our best case, look at what that includes. We can compare it to a worst case as well, and any other scenarios you want to create. So you're able to start kind of layering changes into those scenarios as well. There's a few other pieces, but those are really the kind of the main features. There are quite a lot of settings I can show just to show you some of the other things you can do. There's things like the drawdown, being able to define, how quickly your AR and AP draw down over time. There's individual account line settings. So we've got some loan repayment accounts here. You can actually set interest rates for those. So there's quite a lot you can do on the back end of this forecast to really dial it in, and as well as tax that we showed. And so you can go in and change all of that. But that's kind of the front end features of this. In terms of the output of the forecast, so you can always download your forecast in whatever format you have it in. So let's say we turn on the best case and we want to just send this forecast to our client. We can just download it here for the period we want and download straight to Excel and send it off. And that's a quick way to export it. You can also give access to your clients to log in and view the forecast. That's an option. And then the forecast numbers and components can also be included in your Fathom reports, your existing management reports. So that's an option as well. Any questions before moving on? I can show some of the reports as well, Heather. But wondering if there's any questions from the group too.
Probably in line with what you're actually moving on to. Melinda has asked, can you brand the reports with your own branding?
Yes, absolutely. You can. So you can add your logo directly into your account settings. Just upload it here in the branding section, and then you can remove the Fathom logo and replace it with your logo on the main dashboard here in Fathom. So the My Company screen, as well as any reports you create. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions at this stage? Either ask them in the chat area or jump online.
Nope. Happy to walk through some of the report kind of outputs as well, if that would be helpful to see.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Yep. So this is the report center in Fathom. We'll just create a brand new report. And do it for April. And so just to show you some of the options here. So you can show charts with the forecast information. So we'll show revenue. And then we can add a projection as well. So we can go ahead and add in a future projection and include the forecast in that. So we can show basically a chart representing the forecast. And we've got that for this year. So you can quickly show individual metrics and where they land using the forecast. You can also drop in financial statements that show the forecast. So we've got a forecasting section here, and you can drop in this year rolling, this year monthly, a next year monthly, a MicroForecast. You can also drop in assumptions, which is good context to have when you're showing a forecast, what actually went into it. And so you can drop that into your report as well. So I'll just drop in that this year, show what that looks like. So this is a kind of a basic format, but you can expand this as well. Maybe you want to show your expenses and apply that. And then the other thing you can also show is the roadmap. So you can show a few different components, but those are the main ones. So basically a chart and showing the forecast results in a table as well.
Could you show us another few of those visual charts? Because I know that we get very heavily engrossed in numbers, but I did notice you did have some of the visual charts there.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're in the report builder here, they're kind of arranged by the type of metric, just to give you an easy starting point. So if you want to show profitability, for example, you can jump in there and just add some of these default options. So let's say we want to show profitability as a trend. And it's all drag and drop in this builder, so you can move things around, resize them, depending on how you want to arrange them in your report. But yeah, this is another kind of a trend of multiple metrics on a single chart, and you could show projections for each of these as well, going out into the future.
Yeah, it was great to see how easy it was for you to drop them in. And as we learn when we're dealing with our clients, sometimes having the visualization in front of them helps with that conversation and helps to tell that story of what's happening. I would be keen for you, even if you don't demonstrate it, to talk to consolidations and how whether that's possible or not.
Yeah. So consolidations as a whole, Fathom automates the actual joining of the financial statements. So you would import your underlying entities first, and then Fathom will group them for you and combine them into a chart of accounts. That's very quick to set up. You can do your eliminations and adjustments in Fathom as well. Fathom handles the multi-currency consolidation. So if you do have any clients operating in multiple currencies, it'll do that. And then you can build a forecast in the consolidation too. So you can build one for the group. You can build forecasts for the underlying entities. And there is a way to get those underlying forecasts to roll up to be the group forecast if you'd like that as well. But essentially, what Fathom does is gives you that consolidated group as basically a new entity, joining together the financials. Here's a group here, and then you'll be able to go into the reports and download a side-by-side consolidated financials or just the group totals as well.
Thank you. It's extraordinarily powerful, that is.
Yep. Yeah. We get quite a few new users coming just for the consolidation because they're doing it by hand and are ready to not be doing it by hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions from the group?
Yes. Does anyone else have any questions? If you want to take yourself off mute, please join us and ask your question, or pop it in the chat area and I'll ask the question.
Heather, can I just ask subgroups via just having one ABN and you've got like subgroups of your business underneath that one ABN?
Yep. So would that be, in terms of the accounting setup, would that be like 1.0 file, or is that?
Yeah, 1.0 file, and you may have, like, say with hospitality industries, you know, you may have your restaurants, you may have your cellar doors and all that sort of stuff. So just the different business divisions within that 1.0 file.
Yeah, definitely. And they're set up as divisions in the file as well. Yeah, so there's a couple. So if they're set up as tracking categories in Xero, each of those individual divisions, you can filter all your Fathom reports by division, and so you can show profitability by division, you know, sales, all of your business metrics by division.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks, Melinda.
Thank you, Melinda. Does anyone else have any questions? It's a really great opportunity to ask James any questions that you may have to help you using the reports or helping your clients with them.
Looks like we answered everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
If anybody does have questions afterwards, feel free to email me directly. I'm happy to put you in touch with resources or answer your questions. We do have a free trial, so that's a great way to test Fathom out and just give it a go with a client or two. But other than that, yeah, really appreciate everyone taking the time to be here and learn more. And hopefully this was helpful for you.
Really appreciate you joining us today, James, and sharing that. I think it's, you know, I'm so proud that Fathom is grown out here of Brisbane here. It's such a beautiful solution and obviously extraordinarily powerful way to surface that information and help our clients and help them understand what's happening in their business and make informed business decisions. So really appreciate you joining us today. If no one else has any more questions, I will thank you for your presentation. Really appreciate it, James.
Thanks for hosting, Heather.